My wife withdrew $117,800 and transferred it to her ex-boyfriend and assured me that there was nothing wrong with it. My name is Ellis. I'm 35. I work in back-end systems development for a logistics firm, fully remote. My life has always followed a predictable rhythm: spreadsheets, code commits, morning walks, routine budgeting. I'm the type to track every dollar, read every clause, and keep backup copies of backup copies. It's not about fear, just how I've always moved through life. Carefully. Intentionally. And still, I missed it. Missed the quiet shift, the way something can slowly lean off course while you're focused on building a future. I lived with a woman named June for just over 2 years. We'd been together a while longer, 4.5 years total. We met through friends at a backyard dinner in Tucson. I just transferred roles and moved into a modest condo. She was between contracts, fresh off a freelance branding project that took her out to Seattle for a few months. We talked over paper plates of ribs and corn salad, and something clicked. She moved into my place after about a year. Not all at once, just a toothbrush here, a favorite blanket there, until one day it felt more like ours than mine. June was imaginative, always chasing one idea or another. She worked in creative direction, sometimes branding, sometimes visual design, sometimes photography. Most of her gigs were through referrals, and her income was a little erratic, but she always covered what she promised. We made it work. My income was steady, and we'd settled into a rhythm that felt fair. I never minded fronting extra if it meant stability for us both. I thought we were working towards something. Last September, we started talking about the next step. Not marriage, we were never that traditional, but something shared, rooted. A home, maybe. June had a deep dislike for our upstairs neighbors, said they walked like elephants. She missed having a yard, some green space, a garden. I had already started looking at listings casually, a few bookmarked townhouses in quieter neighborhoods. One night, while we were folding laundry, she suggested starting a future fund. Not just a house fund, she said, something flexible for the life we might want. I agreed. It sounded like progress. Like building something instead of just imagining it. We opened a high-yield savings account through my bank. Since I already had online access, it went under my name. She didn't mind. She just wanted to contribute. We agreed she'd send her half to me each month, and I transfer the full amount into the account. Simple enough. The first few months were smooth as transfers came in, the balance grew. I barely checked it. It felt like something we were doing together, and I trusted that. By early spring, the balance had climbed to just over $21,000. Most of it was from my deposits. I was earning more, and I told her I was happy to front-load it. We're investing in our future, I remember saying. She kissed me on the shoulder and said, exactly. The moment everything changed was unremarkable. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was printing a shipping label for a vintage camera I'd sold online. My own laptop wouldn't connect to the printer, usual tech hiccups, so I used hers. We shared devices often, no secrets, or so I thought. I sent the PDF, opened her print queue, and clicked print. But there were 2 files in the queue. One was mine. The other was titled, transfer_confirm_cold.pdf. I hovered my mouse for a second. Then clicked. What opened was clean, simple, a confirmation of a wire transfer. $117,800, sent 2 days prior. The recipient was listed as Colt Hensley. In the memo, hope this helps. Don't make me regret this. I stared at it for a while, not fully processing. The date matched my last paycheck, my direct deposit had landed that morning. I opened our shared savings account in another tab. The balance was $0. That's when the quietness set in, not panic, not anger. Just the sort of void that makes everything else feel far away. June had mentioned Colt before. Not often. Maybe 3-4 times over the years. A past relationship, long over. Someone she said never quite got it together. The first time she brought him up, she said, he's the kind of story you don't finish reading, just put down and never pick back up. I didn't pry. We all have someone like that. That night, she came home like always. Keys in the tray. Kiss on the cheek. Asked if I wanted her to pick up something for dinner, she was craving Greek. I said I wasn't hungry. She offered to grab it anyway. I said I already ate. She didn't push. Just turned on the TV, curled up on the couch, scrolled through our streaming apps. I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling, listened to the hum of the fridge. Around 3 a.m., I got up, opened my laptop, and started pulling records, transfers, Venmo payments, bank statements. I took screenshots, downloaded PDFs, exported transactions to a spreadsheet. Created a folder called June Discrepancies. It still didn't feel real. The next morning, she made coffee. Took mine too, without asking, like always. Sat at the counter, chewing on the end of a pen while scrolling her phone, like she was busy but not really doing anything. I watched her, wondering what I was supposed to say. Ask if she'd seen Colt? If she drove to him? If they met at some diner and hugged across a Formica booth? I didn't say a word. She noticed me watching and gave a soft smile. Everything okay? I nodded once. Didn't sleep well. She didn't ask more. Just wandered off to take a video call, the kind she often said was for a client, though I was no longer sure which were real and which were friends pretending to be work. By evening, I had rehearsed the question a dozen times in my head. I waited until she was pouring a glass of wine, then said quietly, "Can we talk for a minute?" She paused a blink longer than usual, then put the bottle down and sat at the kitchen table. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just asked. "Did you send Colt Hensley $117,800? She blinked. No gasp. No denial. Just a pause. Then, yes. No hesitation. I said nothing. Waited. She sighed, like she was being inconvenienced. He's been going through a really hard year. I asked why she didn't mention it. Why she used our shared fund without a word. She looked at me like I was missing something obvious. "It wasn't about you, Ellis." That sentence cut deeper than I expected. I asked where she got the money. She shrugged. "From the future account. The one we built together? It was just sitting there," she said. "He needed it now. It's not like it's gone forever." I asked if she thought it was okay. If she really believed this was fine. She looked me right in the eye and said, "I did what I thought was right." Then, after a breath, she added, "He was there first, Ellis. You're just a safe choice." There was no anger in her voice. No apology. Just an odd kind of reverence, like she was giving me credit for being the stable one. Like I should be proud to be dependable while she made brave decisions. I stood up and left the table. Walked into my office and closed the door. She didn't follow. I opened the folder I'd started the night before and began sorting everything into place: bank screenshots, payment records, the PDF wire confirmation she'd accidentally left in the print queue. I copied everything to a secure external drive and labeled the backup contingency, legal. It still didn't feel like it was happening. That night, June didn't say much. She ordered food for herself, something spicy, something loud-smelling, and sat on the couch watching a nature documentary like we were any ordinary couple. I stayed in the office. Organized files. Checked transfer policies from the bank's help section. Reread everything I'd saved. The account had only one name on it, mine. There was no joint access, no co-ownership, no legal provision tying her to those funds. She had the routing number because I'd given it to her, back when we opened the account. She said she wanted to track our progress. That felt logical at the time. We were planning for a life. But now, that trust looked like negligence. Saturday came and went. She didn't bring it up. I didn't either. I spent most of the day in the spare room, pretending to work on a project. She curled up on the couch with a blanket and watched a miniseries about disaster survival. At one point, I passed through the kitchen and heard her laughing at something on her phone. Her shoulders relaxed, feet tucked under her like nothing had changed. That was the first moment I understood just how different our realities were. Sunday morning, she was lighting a candle and blending a smoothie like it was the first day of a spiritual reset. I sat with a notepad and wrote a checklist. Freeze account. Gather proof of ownership. Call bank fraud department. File report. Secure backup records. Change passwords. Notify HRE, direct deposit. Research legal recourse. It was the first list I'd written in months that didn't have both our names on it. She came in mid-morning and asked if I wanted to go for a walk. I told her I had some work to catch up on. She accepted it with a casual nod and left alone. That afternoon, I went through every digital trace. June had left her email logged in on the iPad. It wasn't intentional, we often shared devices, but this time, I noticed a message in the sent folder addressed to the wire service. The subject line was blank, but the body said, "Can you confirm the transfer was completed? He needs to know by Friday. I want to be sure the funds are clear." That was dated the morning my paycheck landed. Her writing tone was exactly how she spoke in high-stakes situations, measured, poised, almost transactional. It made my stomach turn. I printed it out. Added it to the folder. By Monday, I had everything I needed. I called the bank's fraud line directly. Not customer service. I asked to speak to someone in their investigation unit and explained the situation. I told them the account was mine, sole owner, and that funds were withdrawn without my explicit consent. I told them who had accessed the details, how she did it, and what documentation I had. They listened. Took notes. Asked for the full name of the person who received the transfer. I gave them Colt's. The representative on the line was polite but firm. He explained that since this involved a known associate and not a stranger, the case would go through internal review. I'd receive an affidavit to confirm the transaction wasn't authorized. Once signed, they would initiate the dispute. The email with the affidavit arrived 20 minutes later. I signed and returned it before lunch. I also filed a police report. Non-emergency. I wasn't ready to press charges, but I wanted it on file. The officer who took my statement, Officer Lynn, was patient. She asked questions without judgment. At the end, she looked over her notes and said quietly, "You're not the first person to sit here with this kind of story." I asked what she meant. She said, "Sometimes people have patterns. Financial ones. Emotional ones. They just keep finding someone who'll help them stay afloat." I didn't say anything, just nodded. Back at home, I created a zip folder of every piece of documentation, the screenshots, the transfer history, June's emails, the conversation snippets from our messages where she called it our fund, audio messages where she talked about the house we'll build, even the joint spreadsheets she created with headings like 2024 goals and move-in targets. I labeled the folder documentation_2025_June case and sent it to the bank's fraud unit with the case number from the police report. That night, June asked if I wanted to have a reset conversation. That was her phrase. She poured 2 glasses of wine and lit candles like she was setting the stage for a romantic intervention. I said, "Not tonight." Her face tightened just for a second before she forced a soft smile and said, "Okay." She was quiet for the rest of the night. But I noticed her watching me carefully. The kind of watching that isn't about love but about calculation. By Thursday, she was getting restless. She started asking if I was okay. Asking if I wanted to talk. Asking if work was stressing me out. She even brought up our old fall road trip plan, said we could still go if we just put everything out there and started fresh. I told her I needed space. That I was sorting through a lot mentally. She accepted the answer. But not really. She started hovering near my workspace. Glanced at my open tabs when I stepped away. Watched my phone screen out of the corner of her eye. Once, she asked if she could borrow my charger and stood there holding it, not plugging it in, just watching the laptop screen for something to appear. I closed the lid. What I didn't expect was a message from her old friend, Marla. We'd met a few times. Shared a few dinners. Marla always struck me as observant, a little more grounded than the rest of June's creative circle. She sent me a message on a random Tuesday. "Marla. Can I ask something personal?" Me. "Sure." "Marla. Did she send Colt money again?" The word again hung in my mind like an alarm bell. I asked what she meant. Marla replied with a long message. Direct, not emotional. She said June had done something eerily similar years ago with someone else, a man named Aaron, a teacher she lived with in Oregon. They had a joint savings account. Talked about marriage. Then one day, June wired a large portion of their savings, around $6,000, to Colt. That time, Colt had just lost his job and totaled his car. She called it being loyal, Marla said. I called it something else. I asked, what? Her reply came fast. Emotional sabotage. She always finds a way to disrupt stability when it starts to feel too permanent. Especially if she thinks someone needs saving more than she does. I sat with that message for a while, staring at the screen. Then I remembered what the bank investigator had said: if I had any contact information for the recipient, I should notify them that the funds were under review. I pulled up the transfer document and found the email Colt had used. I drafted a short, calm message. Subject: unauthorized wire transfer documentation. Colt. This transfer was made without my authorization and has been reported to my financial institution and law enforcement. If you choose to retain the funds, you may be contacted by the issuing bank or investigators. LSM. I attached a PDF with the transfer details, the signed affidavit, and the case number. I sent it and waited. It didn't bounce. The morning after I sent the email to Colt, June started pacing. She wasn't loud about it, but there was a noticeable change. She kept her phone in her hand all day, refreshing her inbox, flipping between apps, muttering to herself every so often. I watched her out of the corner of my eye while pretending to focus on work. It was like she knew a thread had been pulled, and now she was waiting for the unraveling. That evening, she asked, "Have you heard from anyone lately? About anything?" I kept my voice even. "No one important." She nodded but didn't ask what I meant. The next morning, I noticed something else. Her Venmo account, which she'd used regularly, sometimes even for groceries or splitting meals with friends, had gone quiet. No new activity. I also checked Colt's public Instagram profile. It was gone. Either deleted or made private. Whatever happened after the email, she and Colt had both gone dark. By Friday afternoon, I got a call from the fraud division of the bank. The representative, someone named Simon, told me the internal review was complete. The transfer had been flagged as unauthorized, and while the funds couldn't be returned immediately due to third-party constraints, the receiving account had been frozen. A separate case had been opened to investigate potential patterns of misuse. Simon paused for a moment. Then said, "I can't share specifics about other transactions, but I will say that this isn't an isolated case. You've done the right thing documenting everything early." He didn't have to elaborate. I thanked him and ended the call. When I walked out of the room, June had just come back from somewhere. She set her keys down quietly, glanced over at me, and asked how my day was going. "Fine," I said. "Productive." She stood there, looking like she wanted to ask more, but didn't. Later that evening, she sat across from me while we ate. We didn't speak much. She picked at her salad. I had leftovers. The silence between us wasn't just awkward, it was dense, like something growing between walls that hadn't been opened in years. She asked if I was still mad. I said, "I'm not angry. I just needed clarity." That seemed to confuse her more than if I'd raised my voice. That weekend, I packed quietly. Not everything, just essentials, my laptop, a week's worth of clothes, my passport, and the backup drive with all the documents I'd compiled. I placed them in a black duffel and left it in the coat closet. I told myself I'd give it a few more days. Sunday morning, she was scrolling through her phone again. Candle burning. Jazz playing. It could have been any normal morning from months ago, if not for the faint tension in her shoulders. She turned to me. "You're quiet lately. I know this whole thing shook things up, but don't you think we could talk through it? Maybe find a way to start over?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I think you already made the decision for both of us, June." She went silent. Looked down at her cup. Nodded slowly, but said nothing. That night, I left a box on the kitchen table. It wasn't a breakup gesture. No dramatic letters or tearful ultimatums. Just a cardboard box with a few carefully chosen things. Not her clothes. Not her favorite books or shoes. Just the things tied to the lie. A printed copy of the spreadsheet she once made labeled "Our Future Goals" with a tab for house expenses and estimated down payments. The welcome letter from the bank where we'd opened the savings account. A Polaroid of us standing in front of a blue house with yellow trim we toured 6 months ago. She had convinced me to visit it even though it was outside our price range. I remember how she said it reminded her of the house she grew up in. On top of the pile, I placed a printed PDF. Wire transfer dispute summary. Status, under review. Account holder, LSM. Funds, $117,800. Flagged, unauthorized use. Report filed, 13 days ago. She didn't say anything when she saw it. Just stared. Her hand hovered above the box like she didn't want to touch it. That evening, I didn't sleep in our room. I stayed on the couch. She didn't ask me to come back. By Tuesday, I left. Not forever, not yet, but I needed out. I stayed at a friend's place for a few nights. He had a guest room and didn't ask many questions. I told him a version of the truth: financial betrayal, trust broken, still working through the fallout. While I was gone, I finalized my lease transfer with the property manager. I moved my remaining bank accounts to a different institution. Locked my credit file. Put alerts on my main accounts. Changed my passwords. All of them. Even the ones that felt unnecessary. I also updated my direct deposit information at work. Sent in the form with my new account. No way June could get near it now. A few days later, I got an email from her. It was long. Paragraphs upon paragraphs. It wasn't angry, but it was intense. She said she never meant to cause harm. That she panicked. That Colt had been a part of her life before I was. That she thought I would understand in time. That I was the person she always thought would fight for her. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent her a single email. Subject line, no more safety net. The body of the email was blank. She never responded. A week later, a mutual friend told me she moved. Not just out of the apartment, out of the city. No forwarding address. No announcement. Just gone. I didn't ask where. Didn't care. I hadn't recovered the money, but the account was closed. The case was active. The records were solid. My name was protected. The rest? That was hers to carry now. After June left, everything felt oddly still. Not quiet in the peaceful way, not yet, but still in the way an empty theater feels after the lights go down. No more performances. Just the echo of what was. I stayed with my friend Mason for a couple more weeks. He didn't pry. Gave me space. Let me sit with things. Every night, I'd eat dinner on his back porch, watching the sun slip behind the fence, and I'd try to piece myself back together, not just from the betrayal, but from the questions it left behind. How do you miss something that big? How do you sleep next to someone for over 2 years and not notice when they're quietly stepping away? The answer isn't as dramatic as people think. It happens in small moments. Little hesitations. Tiny omissions. A flicker in someone's eyes when they say, "I've got it handled," and you believe them, not because they've earned it, but because you need to. What hurt more than the money was how carefully she'd calculated it all. The way she framed her actions not as deception, but as a kind of loyalty, just not to me. That stuck. I met with the bank's fraud unit again, this time on a video call. The investigator, Simon, same as before, told me that while it would take time, the case was now in a phase where they could pursue external recovery. Since Colt's account had been frozen, any further withdrawals were halted. I asked if that meant I'd get the money back. He paused, then said, "There's a chance. But we can't promise full recovery." I expected that. Later that day, I got a call from the officer handling my case. Officer Lynn. She let me know that the initial report had been filed as a financial misuse incident under known associate status. If I wanted to escalate it to charges, they would need me to come in and provide a final statement. I sat with that decision for a long time. It wasn't about revenge. I wasn't angry in that way. But I also knew that people like June rarely stop until someone draws a boundary they can't cross. So, I asked Officer Lynn what the potential consequences were legally, socially, emotionally. She was honest. Said it would likely result in restitution attempts, not jail. That it would put something formal on the record. That it might prevent someone else from waking up to the same realization I had. That's what made the choice for me. I went in the following Monday and gave my full statement. Signed the release. The case moved forward. I didn't tell anyone else. A few days later, I changed my phone number. Not because she was still trying to reach me, she wasn't. But I wanted to create distance between the version of me she knew and the one I was trying to rebuild. I found a new apartment, nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom on the quieter side of town. It had wood floors, a decent view of a park, and a small patio just big enough for a folding chair and a plant. For the first few days, it didn't feel like mine. Just a place I was temporarily occupying, waiting to exhale. Then one night, I made a real dinner. Lit a candle. Played music I liked instead of something chosen to keep the peace. I opened a bottle of wine and took a photo of the meal, not to post anywhere, just to remind myself that I was still capable of care, even if no one else was around to see it. It was small. But it mattered. The biggest lesson didn't come from the betrayal itself. It came from what followed, the silence. The days when no one was asking where I was, or what I was thinking, or if I wanted to talk about it. That kind of quiet forces you to hold your own story in your hands, not to explain it, not to edit it, just to accept it. I saw a therapist for a few sessions. Mostly to untangle the knot of what it meant to be the safe choice. That phrase haunted me more than I wanted to admit. She said it with such certainty, like dependability was something to be pitted. My therapist, a man named Brian, asked, when did being stable become something to apologize for? That question stuck with me. He helped me see that people like June weren't searching for safety. They were addicted to unpredictability, not because it felt good, but because it felt familiar. When things got quiet, when the roof stopped leaking, when the bills got paid, that's when she panicked. That's when she needed to find chaos again. And I was just too quiet for her storm. One night, out of curiosity more than anything, I looked up Colt's name. There wasn't much, just a LinkedIn profile that hadn't been updated in years and an old interview from a community radio station where he talked about pursuing alternative paths and refusing to live by a system that commodifies people. The irony wasn't lost on me. That was the last time I searched his name. A month later, I received a formal letter from the bank. The investigation had concluded. The funds were deemed misappropriated under account abuse by a known party. While full reimbursement wasn't guaranteed, any remaining assets from the frozen account were to be returned to me in partial repayment. The amount was far less than what was taken, a little over $14,000. But I didn't cry over the difference. Because the money was only part of it. What I got back was something harder to measure: clarity. Proof. A narrative that didn't rely on what-ifs. A few months passed. The world kept turning. I reconnected with people I hadn't talked to in a while. Focused on work. Took up running again. Even joined a cooking group that met once a week to try new recipes. It sounds like something a rom-com character would do, but it worked. There was no dramatic ending. No text from her begging for forgiveness. No secret confession or final scene. June simply disappeared into the background of my life, like white noise that faded once I stopped listening. Sometimes people don't come back. Sometimes they don't apologize. And that's okay. I kept the folder with all the documentation. Labeled and archived. Just in case. But I haven't opened it in months. Every now and then, I remember the way she used to describe me to her friends: "Ellis is the one you can count on." Back then, I thought that was a compliment. Now I know it was something else, a placeholder. A foundation she could stand on while she reached for someone who needed saving. I used to be her safety net. Turns out, even nets have limits. And when they tear, they don't patch themselves. They just stop catching the same falling stories. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.